Okay, thank you so much, and sorry I had to cut you. We started a bit late, and we're already almost 10 minutes over time, but we'd like to take a few questions, and we'll start here from the room. So can they both hear? Do we need a microphone? Do they need to come to the microphone to ask the question?
Yeah, we have
Yes.
mics.
Okay, sure. Yeah, okay.
We can full screen. Professor Lang, could you just try and move your microphone away from your face while you're, unless you're answering a question? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Kimberly Reed with the International Food Information Council Foundation here in Washington, D.C. And Rachel, I'm really looking forward to your paper. If you could give us some details on when you're going to be debuting that at the UN meeting. And also, I'm wondering if you focus at all on effective communication to consumers when you're talking about nutrition and health issues. Our organization focuses on that, and we're going to be holding a global diet and physical activity communication summit up in New York at the same time as the UN meeting, and love to talk with you about partnership.
Okay, we'll take a couple more questions.
I'm Klaus von Grebner from IFPRI. I have a question. In the private sector, you normally make the firm distinction between authority, accountability, and responsibility. Has one done a mapping in your area of research? Who's responsible for what? Who has the authority to do something? And who should be accountable? Because it seems to me we're always talking about we should, but who should? And who has to? And what are we missing there?
Hi, this is Emmy Simmons, Partnership to Gut Hunger and Poverty in Africa. I want to thank all three of you for an amazingly interesting and provocative set of sort of points and recommendations. My question goes to the issue of the sort of health industry perspective, even with regard to NCDs. It seems to me that there is a greater weight and a greater willingness to invest on curative kind of approaches. Once people have diabetes, then you treat it. Once people have cancer, then you treat it. And given Rachel's point about the difficulty of really understanding and documenting causality, how prepared, in your view, I guess all three of you, do you think that the health industry is to really embrace this preventive approach that all three of you are taking? So I just found the sort of integration of your perspectives here interesting.
Great. How did you have a question? Yeah, we'll take one more.
Hi, this is Howdy Buis from Harvest Plus. When we're relating agriculture to non-communicable diseases, what specifically can we do in agriculture to help the situation? It sounds like it's more about food processing, it's more about consumer awareness. When we're talking about linking agriculture and nutrition, well, we can breed for more minerals and vitamins, we can put minerals in fertilizers, we can introduce novel crops, improving nutrition, but specifically for non-communicable diseases. Thank you.
Okay, let's start with the question for you, Rachel, please.
Thanks very much, Kimberly. So the details, the report will be launched the morning of the 19th of September in New York at an event there at the UN. It'll be put on the website of the Chicago Council on Global Affairs, I think, simultaneously. So it'll be available. Your question about the consumer aspects, I didn't have enough time to mention that explicitly today, but very much I believe that consumers are important. Information is very important for consumers as well as for health care workers and the health service providers themselves. I spoke with Dr. Ruth Onyango, who's one of the leading nutritionists in Africa, about this. I have over the years, and she says, most African nutritionists, she edits the major journal in Africa on nutrition, most African nutritionists aren't very well aware of these risks, of food risks and nutrition risks to NCDs and what the connections are. So there's information that is needed on a lot of counts, and I do, in the report, have specific recommendations to each of 6 different kinds of stakeholders, and consumers are one. And it's not just information to consumers, it's interventions that affect consumer behavior. It's changes in incentives that affect consumer behavior. There are a number of ways, some of which we don't fully understand yet, and some studies are needed to be able to figure out more about consumer behavior. But one of the specifics is to partner with industry who has tremendous knowledge about consumer eating behavior, and to learn how to guide that in healthier eating behavior directions, just as one example.
Good. I will now give Dr. Lang the floor, or the microphone, and you can choose to answer either of the 3 remaining questions.
Okay, thanks.
All of them.
I'll answer.
Views on.
I hope. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Good. I'll answer or address Emmy. I hope they got the name Emmy from Partnership Africa. I think you're right. It's a fundamental rule of public health is that crises tend to drive responses, whereas the intellectual analysis is always go upstream, deal with prevention. And you're right. There is always a predilection to invest in curative rather than preventive. I mean, let me push it even further. My friend Jeff Rayner and I, in our huge new tome on public health, are essentially become very sober about the last 30 years experiment with health education, which is essentially putting the responsibility onto the consumer when the consumer isn't actually able to address the upstream factors. And I think that's why the sort of thinking Derek was sharing with us is very important, because there is a recognition by companies of what the intellectual analysis has been saying for some time, which is basically health education doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's a structural problem, so we've got to address it structurally. And that means thinking systemically in all the things that I think all 3 of us have been talking about. A quick comment to, I hope I get your name right, Howdy of Harvest Plus. What can agriculture do to help? Well, you gave a little list, all of which were right. I suppose I was trying to point to the big picture, mainly because I deal a lot with politicians and they have a very short attention span. I think we've got to encourage them and policymakers, both in the public sector and in the corporate sector, to shift towards thinking plants. And yet in agriculture, I speak as an ex-farmer actually, I should declare that interest. I was a hill farmer in England. We've tended to focus upon the security that comes from meat and dairy. It's that regular check. It's that capital on 4 legs, which an animal is. And plants are much more fragile and harder to make money out of from a farming point of view. And what we've got to get, and I think we've now got from the epidemiologists, is a very clear picture of what human physiology needs. Okay, we need to take exercise, etc., and that's a part of the Western model of going to shop in a car, using oil to get there instead of walking or bicycling. But from farming point of view, we've got to get plants into the middle of agriculture again. I'm always saying it's horticulture, not agriculture, that we need to center on. And if you listen to what Derek was saying, PepsiCo is becoming a plant company, and that's good.
Thank you. And Derek? your final words?
Just two responses, Marie. First, on the preventive issue, I would say one of the things we tend to neglect has been the fact that the way in which research and development in health has been prioritized by the public sector favors investments in basic research and applied research that comes up with medicators as opposed to nutritional solutions or even activity solutions. Yeah. In other words, the prevention agenda is actually underplayed by the public purse through the big R&D structures, whether it's the NIH or the British MRC or the European Commission. Any increase or shift towards supporting the type of research that would come up with food-based, activity-based, urban design-based, would have enormous implications both for what food and other companies can do, but also for society on the prevention agenda. And it's certainly something we support. And the last point, I think Howard's question on what specifically agriculture needs to do to promote NCDs, I would say, Howard, that what we are doing to promote optimal nutrition in general is the way we should go. And the prescription Tim spelled out about is exactly what we need to make more easily available to people worldwide. When I was involved at WHO in the 916 report, we came up with what would be the optimal diet. We then went to FAO and tried to get them to do the missing piece of work, which was to say, what should the agricultural supply look like in the world if it was to make consumers' ability to easily consume that diet possible? And of course, it was work that has yet to be done. Of course, I can go into specifics, and I hope the report Rachel mentioned will probably mention some of these. But I think the first specific we need to think about is having a dialogue with agriculture about saying, what will it take to shift the current very heavy focus towards increasing meat, palm oil-based vegetable oil, as opposed to a greater diversity of fruits, vegetables, nuts, grains, and legumes?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, well, I'm really sorry to have to cut you and stop the discussion, but I think this was a wonderful set of presentations. We will post the presentations on our website, so there's so much information there. You were going quite fast, and I'm happy to have access to this rich set of slides. I forgot to thank you, Derek, for even trying to come today, and then for running back to your office and being available on video. This was quite a heroic moment, and thank you, Tim, for being there at the end of the afternoon. And I think technology was good in allowing us to see you, but you didn't get to see us and you didn't get a feel for the audience, but you managed very well without it. Thank you so much. And thank you, Rachel, for coming yesterday and being here today. So thank you to the three wonderful panelists.